Welcome to today's webinar called Digital Publishing Platforms, WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar. Which one do I use? Which is often the case. We ask ourselves. There's so many digital tools out there, so many ways to publish your content and make it available online, especially if you're not a web developer or coding expert. There's lots of ways now for us to do these things. And so today's kind of looking at three of those digital tools and kind of thinking about what criteria we apply to try and decide which platforms to go with. My name is Jennifer Hootman, and I'm the Digital Humanities Librarian here at the University of Kentucky Libraries. I'm in the Digital Scholarship Department. I also liaise to the History Department as well, so I provide service and support for that department as well. All right. All right, so kind of just very briefly, I thought it might be important to consider what is digital publishing. And it's a pretty broad concept and activity. So it can include lots of different things. So from where I'm coming from, digital publishing includes any activities through which we have scholarly or creative works that are rendered on a public medium, a digital medium in this particular case. So that can be pretty much anything, right? A whole bunch of different kinds of scholarly or research outputs, but then making them available digitally, and from there, lots of different things can happen. It could just be something that is that the person engaging with the digital object is just reading it. It could be something where they actually interact with the digital output in many different ways. So again, that's a very broad definition in which, lots of different kinds of works can be thought of. All right, so some of the popular platforms, I like to use their logos because a lot of times we'll kind of remember logos, maybe even more than the name itself. But these are just some very popular ones that you might have come across or seen, or maybe you've actually used. And I may pronounce them differently or incorrect. But what we have here, we have issue, however you want to say it. Oftentimes it's seen as publishing documents or magazines. JUMAG, FlipSnack. Again, FlipSnack, it's got that flip sort of feel to it digitally, like you're flipping a page. Drupal is a content management system as well as a publishing platform. So you're able to manage content in a very robust way. WordPress is also considered a content management system. Joomla, Wix, you may have seen Wix. Maybe you've even used Wix before. They have a free version. So does WordPress. They have a free version. Lots of these platforms actually have a free version or freemium, where they have the free version, but they also have like a pro account or an upgrade that you can do in order to have more functionality and features. And there's also some platforms that are just at a cost, that maybe they don't have a free version. Squarespace might be another one that you recognize. Omeka and Scalar are some additional platforms that you may have recognized. But today, again, we're focusing on WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar. Those are the three. And one of the reasons why we're concentrating on those three, not only due to like WordPress, for instance, is astronomically popular on the web. So that's one of the reasons clearly, but we have a program here in the libraries called CreateUK, and you can find that at createuky.net. And it's an online space that the libraries is providing for faculty, staff, and students for them to create, manage, and share their research outputs in digital form. And what it allows is CreateUK is a platform in and of itself where you can name your own domain. You have your own web space, your own space in which you can populate a WordPress. Like you can install an application in WordPress, or you can install an instance of Omeka. And you can then use those applications to create your project. So naming your own domain and having a space to publish your research outputs is what CreateUK is about. It also makes for a good platform for classroom or curricular exercises. So we have a number of examples right now where there are faculty using it in the classroom. And it looks like we do have a question maybe. Oh, no, thank you for including the URL. I appreciate that, to CreateUK. So CreateUK equips one with digital tools and a platform on which to use them. There's lots of different content that you can create on that platform. That's why we call it CreateUK. You could create course websites, blogs, portfolios, like professional portfolios, online exhibits, and long form narratives in a digital sense. So really, I'll be showing you some examples of all of those different kinds of activities. Some of them are on our CreateUK platform and some are from other institutions. But I thought it important to demonstrate something from each one of these platforms that I'll be talking about, WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar in particular. Okay, so some of the criteria that you could develop around tool selection oftentimes will have to do with questions you need to ask yourself in the first place. You'll need to really think deeply about your project, or your research output, whatever it is that you're wanting to put into digital form or publish digitally. So one of the things you'll want to, before you pick a platform or a digital tool, you want to make sure that there is sufficient support documentation around that tool. Is there enough help that you could easily access, in other words? Is there documentation that you could go to mine for more information about various features and functionality of that particular tool? And again, our three platforms we're looking at today, WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar, those all three have excellent support documentation. Is it user-friendly? Now, this is kind of a loaded question because it really depends with a capital D in terms of whether it's user-friendly or not. For some, WordPress feels very user-friendly. For others, it feels very difficult to get used to, and maybe the learning curve feels a little steeper. So it really depends on maybe past experiences or just how you relate to the tool itself in terms of how does it feel user-friendly to you. Do the features and functionality match your research project needs? In other words, are you creating a digital exhibit? Well, if you want to have an exhibit, an online exhibit, then does this tool that you're selecting appropriately cater to that? Does it have the features and the functionality to be able to effectively carry out an online exhibit, right? So that's a really important question. You really have to think about your research project needs and what it is that you visually want to convey and the kind of features you want to have with your project. Is your project place-based? Is there a geographic element to the project? That will determine various digital tools you might use. Are you telling a story? Do you need to visualize a data set? Will there be ways in which you engage your audience? Is the technology free, freemium, or at a cost? It's always important to think about your budget. How much space does the tool allow for assets? Different tools have different amounts of space in terms of uploading various data. Where and how are the assets or data hosted? And for some that are doing research projects that have sensitive data, it will be important to think about, okay, how secure is your data on this particular platform or using this particular digital tool, whatever it might be. Where and how are your assets hosted? Is your data openly available or is it kept private? So these are just different data questions, visual questions, cost questions, purpose questions that you'll want to ask yourself when selecting your tool. So looking at WordPress specifically, again, WordPress, you may have known WordPress as a blog. That's originally how WordPress started out. And it's way more than that. It's really a web publishing tool. where you can build websites, and a blog is now just a feature of it, and not really its central functionality necessarily. So again, it's a self-publishing tool. Many people find it to be a very accommodating kind of tool. You can have it, you can use it for a wide range of activities, whether it's digital exhibits, sharing research results, designing classroom projects, promoting events, building portfolios. Really, it's a blank slate, and you can do pretty much whatever you want to with WordPress. Some consider it to have a shallow learning curve, especially if you're going to use it in a very basic way and not do anything too advanced with it. You do not need a technology background or coding skills to operate WordPress effectively, or to utilize WordPress as a digital publishing tool. If you want to do more customizations to it and do some more advanced work with WordPress, then maybe some coding skills would come in handy. But again, it's not necessary in order to use WordPress. It's visually appealing. I think that's what really brings a lot of people into WordPress. Not only its versatility in terms of a tool itself, but it's also very appealing visually. You get a lot of sizzle with WordPress, with the different themes and the different kinds of movement you can get on the WordPress site, the kind of colors and the way images are displayed. So I think that makes it very attractive. There's some very trendy kinds of themes that you can pick for your WordPress site that make it very appealing. It's also extremely popular. That's another reason I think a lot of folks gravitate to WordPress, is because it's really well known, and it's used to a great degree. So it's an interesting fact that WordPress kind of towers over the rest of the publishing platforms when it comes to what's used on the web, on the internet, generally speaking, as well as the market share for content management systems. So we're looking at WordPress behind 43% of all the websites on the internet, which is over a third of the web. Okay, so that's pretty big. And it holds 65% of the market share for content management systems. So, I mean, the difference between that percentage and other very popular digital publishing platforms is there's a huge gap. It just drops dramatically from 65% to I think almost single-digit percentages for other platforms in terms of the market share. So again, WordPress is dominating, I think, out there. Okay, so here are some examples of WordPress that are used on the CreateUK site. We have a number of research lab websites that are being created or have been created through a variety of departments within the College of Medicine. And we, for instance, this one is showing Dr. Lee in his research lab and the kind of research that they produce there. They're from these the center, Sanders Brown Center on Aging. So it just really is a wide variety of individuals who are wanting to post their, or I should say, publish their research labs. So this one in particular, again, from Dr. Lee, this is a WordPress website. This is the home page, and it's of a particular style, a theme that was selected and created. So there's some biography information about Dr. Lee in the lab, their research focus, their funding sources, some of their funding milestones, publications. They also have information on all of their team members of the lab, more specifics about the kind of research they do, contact information, news, links to various news articles or times in which they've been mentioned in the news or highlighted, and a resources page. So, and it's all, continually growing. I don't think anything necessarily is a static website. So if you want to investigate that a little bit, feel free to do so. There we go. So you should see my PowerPoint still, I hope. So Dr. Lee's Research Lab website is a nice example of that particular category, the research lab sites. This is another category of the types of things that are created with WordPress on CreateUK. This is a digital humanities website from Dr. Stephen Davis, and I'm going to hover over. It's the Bitter Alo project at createuk.net. I wonder if I could put that in chat as well.
I've got the link. I can put it in there.
Oh, okay. Oops. I repeated it. So yeah, if you find the Bitter Alo project, that would be great. Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
So this actually is a project using machine learning and applying it to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission archive. So it's an archive of transcripts, testimonies online, and they've done a lot of work using Python to create or to learn more information about the archive itself, and then to create some research outputs. Like in this case, on one of the pages, they have a map and dashboard that they've created and embedded on this WordPress page. Other tools that they have is a network graph, sentence embedding. So different types of digital humanities outputs are highlighted on this website. And this is a grant-funded project. This is another example of a student using WordPress to create a portfolio for a class, English 609, Composition for Teachers. They were tasked with creating a portfolio for their assignment, and in this particular case, they have to share their philosophy of teaching, a little bit of biographical information, their assignments. They have to demonstrate some teaching online, so they've embedded some videos, and also a class activity. So they were tasked with creating this portfolio and the content itself. So putting the content on the WordPress website was part of that. So I think that that's a really interesting assignment, and there's been other classes that have had their students create portfolios as well. I think it's a particularly nice example for graduate students, because this is also a sort of a digital literacy, I think, piece that is important, a skill set that is important to develop among students, so that when they're out there working in their jobs, or even looking for a job, I think having a well-crafted portfolio demonstrating what they know and what they've done, their experiences, can be very important. So this gives them practice in doing that. One other example, this is a course example again with Dr. Janice Fernheimer in Word, or Writing, Rhetoric, and Digital Studies 225. And the title of the class is Craft Writing, Writing Bourbon, Rectifying the Record, the Kentucky Bourbon Industry in Context. So one of the things that she had her students do was to create and write their own article around an aspect of the bourbon industry, and then post that. So this is a page on her class WordPress site, where they have several entries for their first issue that was in the fall of 2020. So at any rate, this is utilizing some very nice aspects of WordPress to showcase student writing. Okay, any questions about WordPress before I go on to Omeka? I'm not hearing, and I don't see anything in chat. So if something pops up and you have a question, please feel free to go ahead and unmute or post in chat. So Omeka is the second platform that I wanted to zero in on today. And it's another software tool that enables you to create what its strong suit is online exhibits, showcasing collections of digital images, text, various multimedia on one site. So when I think of Omeka, I really think of pulling a collection together and exhibiting that online. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be used solely for that. There's been great work done using Omeka and creating more of a website that has a collection feature to it, but it looks more like a website that you would see on the internet as opposed to just a like a digital exhibit. And when I show you some of my examples, you'll better see what I'm trying to say. And but if you're to do that, if you're to use Omeka in that kind of way, like beyond what its strong suit is, you know, the online exhibiting, then in my opinion, you have to have some pretty strong web development or coding skills in order to make that happen. If you use Omeka in a very basic way and you're taking advantage of what it's purposely created for, which is the online exhibits, then you don't have to do any coding. So much like WordPress, you can log in and get to know the back end of Omeka and create your exhibit. So again, when I think Omeka, I think digital exhibits, collections, your storytelling in a way with those exhibits, right? And it looks like we got a question. No, thank you. Thank you for posting omeka.org on there. Because you can download it freely to your own desktop and publish using the free version. We also have it built into the CreateUK platform where you can install it and then showcase your collection there as well. All right, so with Omeka, collections and exhibits. Has very unique and robust features around creating your collections and your digital exhibits. So again, this is where it excels. And if you want to have multiple exhibits and multiple collections or just one, you're able to do either one with Omeka. It has a shallow learning curve, but again, if you're using it in a basic way. And again, this is kind of a relative statement. Kind of depends on your experiences and how comfortable you are using some of these digital tools. So some of them may not feel like a shallow learning curve, but maybe for others it is. So again, that'll vary. But overall, I mean, it's much more shallow if you compare it to other types of platforms. And it also doesn't require any technology background or coding skills in order to use it in a basic way. There's lots of classroom applications for Omeka. You can create digital exhibits, a class exhibit, if you will, and it can be a collaborative kind of design. You can invite, just like WordPress, you can invite additional individuals into your Omeka site in order to upload content or create a collection. So you can definitely have more than one author, in other words, to the site. And what Omeka really shines with is it's the metadata, and this is data about your data. In other words, like if you have a collection of historic photographs that you've made a digital exhibit out of, what you're able to do when you upload that photograph is you're able to add a whole bunch of information about that photograph. So it's on the back end, it's got all this infrastructure for you to add lots of data, for you to add lots of information around your objects. So not every platform has that built in, and Omeka does. So if you're really wanting to include a lot of information around your digital objects, again, I think that this is where Omeka excels. All right, so here are some examples of Omeka, so maybe you can get a little bit better understanding of what it looks like. So this one here, let me see if I can you see my mouse when I mouse over the pop-up?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll leave it there so you can see the URL. This is a 1918 over here digital exhibit that I created with one of our special collections and archives librarians who works with Learning Lab student interns. And we wanted to create an exhibit around what was happening on campus here in 1918. So we had the Student Army Training Corps because of World War I popping up, right? And so we have a whole organization around preparing individuals for war, whether it be learning specific trades or learning like in a classroom setting, or doing drills out in the yard. So we have the Student Army Training Corps. We also have librarians doing work during that time for helping to sustain soldiers with book collections. We also have the Spanish influenza epidemic happening on campus during that time. Classes were actually closed for a period of time. So we have some newspaper articles, we have some ephemera, we have historical photographs, lots of different types of items in this digital collection. So I invite you to look at that and to kind of peruse and see how that collection unfolds on that particular site. This is another example. This is at the University of Michigan, however, not here. But this is a classroom, or I should say a student-driven product, a public history exhibit through the history department and Institute for Historical Studies at the U of M. So this was about women students at the University of Michigan, sorry, and faculty as well. So again, this is a nice display of historical photographs telling a story. And this one is also telling a story, but there are photographs here, but the main collection in this particular example, going north, this is oral history interviews. So these are recorded interviews that you could come to the site and actually listen to and learn more about the experience of those who migrated out of the South and into the North, in this case, Philadelphia. So I think that this is a really cool example. And again, this comes out of a curricular research product from the combined courses at Westchester University in Pennsylvania. And it's a combined course, an undergraduate digital history course with a graduate seminar in digital history and undergraduate honors college students special topics course. So they worked and created the site, and actually there's a few iterations of it. So it had gone through a couple of different classes at least. So it was a work in progress for a little while, but it's a great site and really shows off a collection of oral history interviews. Okay, any questions about Omeka before I talk a little bit more about Scalar? Okay, I see that there was a request for the links, and thank you for including those links. Appreciate it. Okay, no questions right now. All right. Well, I will move on to Scalar. Scalar is the third and final platform I wanted to talk about. And I think what it excels at is a long-form digital narratives. So, I mean, not that it can be limited to it, but I think more ebook or book-like products or manuals or some kind of product like that. So it's a free and open source publishing platform. You can actually through the University of Southern California. So you could go to USC, find Scalar, and actually get an account that way as well. But we also have it installed on CreateUK, and that gives you a platform where you can name your own domain and have it more associated with UK and create your project there. It also enables users to assemble a lot of multimedia and juxtapose them with the narrative. So again, you get a nice looking page where you have, it could be a video with text wrapped, or it can be an image with text wrap. And it also allows you to include a lot of metadata around your, whether they be images or they could be graphics, charts, tables, videos, whatever it might be. You're allowed to, they have a nice infrastructure for you to include lots of information about each one of those objects. So it also gives authors tools to structure like book length works, like I mentioned, long form narratives, and taking advantage of the various unique functionality of Scalar, which is you could have linear format where you go page to page to page, But you could also have nested pages. You could have recursive pathways for reading. So there's a lot of nonlinear ways that you could guide the reader or the user through your work. So there's lots of different ways to structure that. So that's really very nice with Scalar. It also supports collaborative authoring, just like the other two platforms, where you can invite other people to be authors with you. And also there is a way for readers to comment if you want to allow that feature. So a little more specifically, again, in terms of our categories, it's a very accommodating kind of platform as well, just like the other two. You can use it for lots of different purposes, but again, it excels at the long form narratives. So that makes a lot of sense with Scalar. It's very much like experiencing an online book in many ways, but you can use it for digital exhibits. I have got an example that I'm going to share with you on that too. You can use it for collaborative classroom projects. I worked with a professor a couple of years ago who wanted to try out Scalar with his class, a music class, and they were creating kind of a large biographical dictionary, if you will, or encyclopedia. So they had a number of late 20th century and 21st century women composers that they were doing biographies on, and so there's a table of contents of all these composers, and each student was assigned to a particular composer and had to write a biography of that person. So again, you can, it's collaborative in that sense, where you can invite students to that process where they work within the platform. And again, it's nice because it gives them opportunity to learn another platform and tool and build a digital skill that will serve them well for a long time after. So it also has an editorial workflow tool that you can incorporate, but you don't have to, but it is there to utilize. Shallow learning curve, again, this is kind of a loaded statement. For some people more than others, it might feel shallow, might feel steep. But again, when you compare it to other platforms, it really is on the shallow end in terms of the learning curve. And again, no technology background or coding skills are necessary to create a basic site on Scalar. It is visually appealing. There are like project or book covers that you can create, and the individual pages you can, there's different templates that you can utilize that some have more visual appeal than others. And so it accepts a wide range of multimedia, Scalar does. So you can do a lot with it. And here are some examples. This is just one of my own examples, and I'll mouse over digital literacy there. That's the URL to go to check these out. I've got a few tutorials. I was kind of experimenting a little bit with Scalar to see how it might be used to create tutorials. And so each one of these tutorials I have sections, like subsections to them. So you can think about them as chapters. Each tutorial is a chapter, and then within those chapters are sections. So I have a tutorial on Scalar, and there are several sections within that one, and one of the sections is what is Scalar. And so as you can see here, this is my page, my first page of that tutorial in terms of what is Scalar, trying to define that, include a little video embedded there. And off to the left here of this screenshot, you can see the table of contents. And so that's the entire table of contents for the Scalar site, which hosts right now 5 tutorials. This is another example. This is not at our university, of course. This is at Chapman University, but I like this example because it shows off Scalar in a way in which this is what they're calling this a curated exhibit, but it also has a lot of writing to it. So there's that long form digital narrative piece that you don't always get with other exhibiting tools. In terms of how it's laid out very nicely. If you've got a lot of text to include, I think Scalar is something to consider. So like you can see here, it wraps around images. You can have a top level page image and title. And then it also wraps around video content, so forth. And you can also customize the background image as well. And I'll mouse over this one. This is scalar.chapman.edu/scalar/beginning again index. And this is, I think, my final example that I have for Scalar. This is from a student thesis, or it accompanied a thesis for the student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And this one's called Making the Frontier Home, Stories from the Steamboat, Bertrand. And there's a lot of text here. So again, I mean, I think Scalar is really nice for that. Because oftentimes you learn from, like, when you think about websites, you're not supposed to be too long with your text because people aren't reading it necessarily. So there's a whole genre of web writing, or writing for the web, right? But this is a little bit different. This is, you're creating a research work, a book-like type of work, in most cases, online. So there's going to be a lot of text. It's reading online. It's a long-form digital narrative. So in this case, you see 2 pages that I took in these 2 screenshots from this site. And she's got one on mining men and the Victorian home. And you can kind of see this example of the text wrapping around images, different sized images, different types of images. And also this, the first screenshot up here with what looks like a hat, that is an embedded 3D viewer. So I think it's Sketchfab that this student used, where if you hit play, you're able to kind of turn that hat around and look at it up close. So it's a 3D digital object viewer, where the reader can really manipulate that object and move it around, turn it upside down, zoom in and zoom out. So the student has incorporated quite a few of these on many different pages on this particular project. So this also highlights the types of multimedia that you can embed in Scalar, which is pretty cool. I mean, there's lots of different things that you can include. And I don't know if you can see it in this particular example. You may have to actually go to the website. But under each one of these images, you see some captions. And when you mouse over any one of those, it'll open up a little bit more, and you see more detailed information. So that's all that metadata that you can include around the digital objects, which is nice in Scalar. Okay, so that's the end of Scalar and all the different things I wanted to say about these 3 platforms, the strengths of these platforms, examples of these platforms, what they're utilized for, and criteria that you might want to think about developing around questions to ask yourself. So hopefully this has been helpful in terms of learning about the platforms, seeing some of the examples, as well as thinking about how do I choose. Are there any questions?